Okay, so we had started doing the central verse of the Bhagavad Gita, which is mentioned in the verse number 66. We have done this long debate in the Sankara Bhashya on this particular verse. Sarva dharman parityajya mamekam sharanam braja aham tva sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami mam ma suchaha. The Bhagavan is telling Arjuna that you drop all faiths, all practices, all rituals, whatever you're trying to do, and try and focus all your attention, take refuge in me, and I shall rescue out of all sins. Essentially symbolizing this Bhavasagara, this ocean of darkness and all kinds of frustrations and anxieties, which sort of characterize our life here. And secondly, because Arjuna was completely scared and anxious about, uh, you know, sort of committing moral wrongs by engaging in a rightful struggle for asserting his own rights to his estate, which might lead to or result in some deaths of his relatives or opponents who are his elders, who are his brothers and teachers. He's morally in a big dilemma. And therefore, Bhagavan is saying that I shall liberate you, secure your spiritual future against any obstructions, any obstacles caused by any commitment of the war, which may result to violence causing death or harm to others. And I shall liberate you. But then here, as we have discussed it several times, it essentially symbolizes the whole of life. It's not a war. But during the course of life, we can never be sure that we are never committing any moral errors. And Bhagavan has already explained there are two big options. One option is that you do the karma yoga, purify your consciousness. That qualifies you. It gives you the required detachment and required transcendence from attachment to this samsara, this world. And then you go study, after a bit of upasana, with my grace, you start studying the Upanishads. And when you start studying the Upanishads and you understand the meaning thereof, you contemplate on the intended messages there, which are a little, cryptic in nature, not very easy to understand without the guidance of a certain tradition of conversation between the teachers and the students. Then you sort of become a vivikta sevi, try to isolate yourself, you meditate, and then you sort of get the central truth, and through that meditation remove all the layers which are clouding your consciousness, and you reach that final destination, which is not outside of you. It's only you, but you remove all the layers and layers of coatings. Then that pure consciousness, what remains is verily you, and that is God itself. There's no difference. And there you are without name and a form. And you worship me, but ultimately you will reach there. However, he is now saying there is even a superior secret than this karmanishta and jnananishta, and that one is having that saranagati, complete surrender to the Lord. And he had already mentioned that even in earlier verse, if you remember, that those who want to do the karma, the varnashrama dharma, he mentioned that is quite a possible that who will do this Brahmabhuta prasannatmana sochina kankhyati sama sarveshu bhuteshu mad bhaktim lavate param. He mentioned that and he gets this, and suddenly he sort of twists this, and now he's saying that if you cannot go there, you try to do your work in the verse number 56, but you try to surrender yourself to me, and out of my own grace, you're still going to make it. And chetasa sarvakarmani maisanyasya matparaha buddhi yogam upasritya matchitaha satatam bhava. He gave this advice that you do this buddhi yoga, nishkama karma, with dedication to me. And having mentioned a lot of it, now he's saying Okay, I've given you a lot of advice, but remember there is this ultimate option with you, and that is that option, sort of it supersedes all other options. And what is that? That option is directly remaining loyal to the ultimate truth of Lord's presence. And if you can make yourself loyal, if you can surrender yourself, then you shall not have any problem. That's what he's mentioning. And earlier in the verse number 65, he had mentioned, Manmana bhava mat bhakto madhyadi mam namaskuru mami vesyasi satyam te pratijane priyoshime. He had assured him that you will definitely get me. You try to do, you try to worship me. Fill your consciousness with my presence. You try to sort of attain that God consciousness, in which you have a lot of these saints in India, like Thakur Ramakrishna Paramahansa, or you look at Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Tukaram, Tulsi Das, Ramana Maharshi. Somebody is a monist or Advaitavadi, non-dualist. Somebody worships God with name and form. And all of them ultimately were intoxicated with God consciousness, and they overcome through that process. They were able to overcome all the obstacles and distractions, all the pulls and pushes of the lower level consciousness with which we have been born in a body mind complex. Now we'll do sort of analysis of what exactly it means. If you remember, Sarva Dharman Parityajya, Sankaracharya used a load of arguments to establish that this essentially means Sarva Karma Sannyasa. It is not Jnana Karma Samuchaya. You can have Krama Samuchaya, not Jnana Karma Samuchaya, not Saha Samuchaya. Simultaneously, Karma and Jnana will not happen because night and day cannot coexist. If you are doing a lot of ritualized karmas, and then you are saying, I'll also study Upanishads and get liberation, both the things don't work at the same time. You have a phase of ritualistic worship and also do upasana and prayers and meditations. But then you have to drop your activities and you need to be a full-time student of Vedanta and then meditate on that. He glorifies and privileges the Sarvakarma Sannyasa over all else, because if you are not doing that, it's almost impossible to reach there. We have a few exceptions, like Janaka Maharshi was married, and like Vasishtha was married. He had 100 sons. I mean, there were so many earlier days, and even in the present times, there are quite a few examples where some of the people, like Balhavacharya, was married. You cannot say that he had no God realization. There were several other such saints who had a family, and yet they had reached the pinnacle. And through what? Through devotion, to complete surrender to the Lord. So here, Madhusudana Saraswati is intelligently trying to go back to the original straightforward message in this verse, glorifying devotion or bhakti. And he admits that Shankaracharya glorifies sannyasa is the only ultimate means to God realization. And he says that fine, but if that is the case, that has been discussed earlier, why should he mention it as a separate secret? Sarvakarma sannyasa has already been mentioned by Bhagavan Krishna even earlier. Here, definitely, and Sarvakarma sannyasa jnana nishtha. Sannyasa paraka purva jnana nishtha. So you take sannyasa and then do jnana nishtha. But he's saying, yeah, but this is something we're much more straightforward and perhaps the most powerful advice given by Bhagavan to his student. And therefore, he is giving us a very innovative interpretation, saying that devotion to God, prayer to God, meditation on God can perhaps also open the doors towards self knowledge. And perhaps is not far from truth. Because if you look at the life of Sri Ramakrishna Paramahansa and look at his interactions, he did not study Upanishads with any acharya. And yet he was very fluent. And if you look at his responses to different questions, he was talking like a top shot Vedantist. And he was effortlessly solving the doubts and queries of people. And it sometimes becomes obvious that definitely, with God's grace, and when you are completely filled up with divine consciousness, many of these academic questions get solved without us having to do a bit of hair splitting, because that is an academic exercise. But the truth sort of, becomes self-evident to ears of a sadhaka or an aspirant who has removed all impurities from his consciousness. So, in a beautiful way, this will be interpreted by Madhusudana Saraswati. So, let's look at his interpretation. It's not so long as Shankaracharya's, very succinct, and yet at the same time, very compact philosophically. So, he's saying, what is the meaning of Sarva Dharman? There's some doubts. He's saying, Dharma ko parityag karo. Does it mean that you can do adharma? Or what do you mean by dharmas? Right? So, what is the question? He's explaining. Kechid varna dharmaha, kechid ashrama dharmaha, kechid samanya dharmaha. There are certain, depending on the social station in one's life, you have varna dharma. So, for example, in those, historically speaking, those days maybe the Brahmins were into the academic activities, the Kshatriyas were into the military and administrative responsibilities, and the traders, the Vaishyas, were into trading, commercial, entrepreneurial activities, and the Sudras were into these social service activities. Okay, and then he's saying that all these, and kechi samanya dharma, like expressing love and respect for the elders, and then getting up in the morning, doing your nitya karma, helping the poor and the helpless, protecting somebody who's insecure. These are samanya dharma. Ityevam sarvan api dharman parityajya. Forget about the importance of all these dharmas. So we'll become adharmis. Bhagavan has said, a great jnani by nature is vidhyatma. So how can he forget the rules and regulations? He's explaining why. Vidyamanan, avidyamanan, whatever is evident, what is obvious, and what is a little not so obvious. Saranatvena anadritya, yeah, that is what he's saying. Don't look at these dharmas you are doing as the final vehicle for you to reach the destination. You can do the dharmas, that's not a problem. But try to remove your attention on them. Shift your attention from what you are doing, the dharmas you are doing, to me, because you're doing everything for me. You should do some charity work, take care of your parents, take care of your wife and children, look after the poor and helpless around you. These are all good dharmas, do that. But don't get obsessed with them, because they are essentially certain means, and you should offer all that as prayer to me. Saranatvena anadritya, that is not your refuse. Some people say that action will purify, as Voltaire mentioned somewhere. Keep doing your activities, your actions. That will remove all your pain, because he was very anxious and very depressed, looking at social inequality and stuff like that. So he says, keep on doing your work. Work is purifying in nature. But he's saying, yeah, you do your work and do is everything, but never ever understand that to be the final means. It's much easier for you if you actually surrender to me, then you do those things. Anadritya mam ishwaram ekam advityam. And I'm not different from you. I am actually the same as your pure consciousness. And that ekam advityam, there is no second. So what about so many gods and goddesses? We have to understand, I have explained that earlier, we have heard it, that henotheism, that individual gods, ultimately they become that one and the same. The different names and forms through which we're reaching that, the one without a second, the absolute. Sarva dharmana adhishtaram. All these dharmas, what is the foundation for all this? The pure consciousness that I am. Phaladataram cha. And if you do the dharma, who will give you the results? Can you get the results without me? No. The final approval authority is with me. So God is like the supercomputer through which all our punyas and papas are processed, and they are coming back to us as good karmas and bad karmas, good results and bad results. But that supercomputer is all the time there, which processes this information, and that is absolute Ishvara at the ultimate level. Saranam Braja, take refuge in me. Dharmaha santu na santuva. Dharmas exist not. Focus your attention on me. King Tehi. What is the importance of them? He's saying, Anya Sapekshehi, because these dharmas you want to do a charity, so you have to buy rice and jaggery and maybe lentils and some money, some vegetables. You do a feast for the poor people. There are so many variables who are affecting that commitment of that particular good action. But to have faith in me, this is not dependent on any external variables. There's only one variable which you have to focus on. That's your willpower to surrender. That's your clear understanding that this is the best path ahead of me. Mam Ishwaram Ekamadvityam Sarvadharmanam Adhishtaram Faladataram Cha Saranam Braja. Follow them. Why? Dharmaha Santu Na Santu Va. Whether dharmas are there or not. King Tehi Anya Sapekhehi. They are dependent on external variables. Bhagavat Eka Anugrahad Eva. Because even these dharmas can give you results because of my grace. Tu Anya Nirapekhyad Aham. And however, the God's grace is not dependent on anything. Aham Kritartha Bhavishyami iti Nishchayena. So you should tell yourself, yeah, there are powerful people in society. There is the temples, the churches, the mosques, the society, the kings, or the governments, and everything. Okay, my health conditions, good books I'm reading. These are different variables for a very auspicious, sacred, good, morally good life. But I'm finally surrendering to the ultimate divine principle, the ultimate power on earth, God Himself. And because His love for me is not dependent on anything, I'm going to succeed. You have to have that resolution, that faith in me. Iti nishchayena Paramananda Ghana Murtim Anantam. Paramananda Ghana. Bhagavan is the bliss itself, Sachidananda Swarupa. Parama Ananda Ghana. It's just, it's the, infinite mass of pure bliss. Sri Vasudevam Eva. That is what Bhagavan is appearing with the name and a form as Vasudeva. It's Krishna Vasudevam Eva Bhagavantam Anukshana Bhavanaya. That means constantly you meditate on me, not for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. So you do everything. It's like there is a ship which has an anchor and there is a storm. The ship is all the time dangling on the water surface. It doesn't go anywhere because it's anchored there. So make me your anchor. You float on the sea, there's not a problem. And you shall not get drowned. You shall not be blown away by strong winds or by cyclone, because there is the anchor, and I'm your anchor. I'm holding you. Bhavanaya bhajaswa. Keep praying me. Idam eva paramam tattvam. And this is the ultimate truth of this whole of Bhagavad Gita. This message of Bhagavad Gita. He's mentioned a lot of things about meditation, about emotional maturity, about how to handle relationships, about how to go back to our meditative state, and what is Atma Tattva, what is the non-permanence of the body and the mind, the emotions, and how the phalas are binding in nature. He has given a long lecture so that we know how to be in life. But the top secret is this one. This is Paramam Tattvam. Na ataha adhikam asti. There's nothing beyond this which is superior to this secret which I'm mentioning you. Iti vichara purvakena. So have that particular consideration in your mind. Prema prakarshena, and then full of love. If you do it out of fear, you don't get that result. You have to do it out of love. Sarva anatma chinta sunyaya. And then what is other than self? Everything is anatma. Atma, the rest is anatma. I, mine, I, except I, all that you have. When that I is also ahankar with a name and form, these are all minds of the I. So when you remove everything that is yours from that you, like your name, your body, your color, your bank balance, your loans, your relations, you remove everything. What remains? The pure consciousness. That particular sarva anatma chinta sunyate. Then just discard those things for a while. Meditate on me. Manavritya taila dharavat avichinnaya. And then that consciousness should be like, it's like you have that shirodhara. There's a, it's like thread of hot liquid warm oil sort of falls on your head, and they put you, lying, looking forward, and then that shirodhara happens, and it removes a lot of headaches and certain stresses in the body. That's one of the panchakarmas in Ayurveda. Similarly, if you have seen ever how people sort of extract oil from different seeds in the tribal areas. What they do is they have a bag, cotton bag, in which they put the oil seeds and then put it at a higher level, and then they press it. They put it below a huge piece of stone, and then they put a particular kind of thing through which this oil sort of trickles down out of that, and they collect it. And if you look at it, how the oil falls, it exactly looks like a straight line. Slowly, it sort of drips out of it and then flows without any interruption. Taila Dharavat is essentially indicating that this consciousness of you, so far I'm concerned, should be without interruptions. Yeah, how can I do my all work? No, he's not saying you don't do anything, but you should all the time be aware of my presence in your life. So you're all the time aware of me, and you're doing your everything you're doing. So the mind sort of gets non-attached with everything it does. It's like a nurse in a ICU handling 20 patients, emotionally not attached to anyone, and she's like a perfect machine, giving injections and medicine to everyone, but she's quiet. She's mothering 20 patients, and she has no problem. She's doing it as a professional, and she's not stuck with anything. She's always aware of what? Her responsibility. Same way, we are aware of our devotion to the Lord, but we do 20 things. But emotionally, we are not caught up with anything. We're only thinking about God in our lives. Prema pakarshena sarvan anatma chinta sunyaya manavritya taila dharavat avichinnaya satatam chintayet ityarthaha. So you constantly think about it, not once or twice, but satatam. Why is he saying satatam? Because, for a few moments, few hours of meditation of God or prayer gives you some quick results. It is elevating in nature. Right now I was taking a walk along the Ganges, and I saw Sri Ravi Shankar was sitting there, and then people were so excited. They were dancing, listening to some music and singing. And I was thinking, he was quietly sitting. Maybe he was amused. Where all these people from Delhi and other places who have come in big numbers, middle class people, they're dancing, they're super excited. And if you look at it, the whole exercise, is it spiritual? In a certain sense, yes. These people want some respite from the stressful movements of their life. So they've come on a spiritual retreat, and they're happy, they're dancing. It's as good as you're going to a marriage party and dancing with your friends. But there's no real internal change. There's only a very apparent thing. So there is a sense of elevation. But these things do not give any sustainable results. So Bhagavan says, you have to constantly think about me. When God is saying this, you've got to be very sure that whosoever and how powerful may be that guy or God man, a few hours with him and a few donations to him is not going to give any permanent happiness. Because if that be so, Bhagavan would have said that you sing my prayers and dance for half an hour a week. He's not saying that. He's saying that you have to constantly think about me. Atra mam ekam saranam braja iti anena eva sarvadharana saranata parityaga lavade sarvadharman parityaja iti nisheda anuvadaha tat karya karita labhaya yajnaya yajnye samni airam krutva udgayam ityatra na gira gira briyat itivat. So he is giving an academic explanation of it. So there are different kinds of dharmas you are doing, isn't it? As a father, as a son, as a teacher, as a professional. And you have duties, and you're doing that with devotion to God, but there are different kinds of activities you're doing, following different regimen in terms of your discipline and your commitment, your professional ethics and everything. But Bhagavan is saying, just surrender to me. It appears as if he's saying that you deny everything and only focus on me, but that is not the purpose here. He's saying that you have to be constantly aware of my presence and get my grace. And he's giving an example. So there is a particular sama, yajna yajna. That is the name of a particular, rhythmic chanting, shama. Samni airam kritva udgyam ityatra. So you put that together and then you sing. Na gira gira iti bruyat, and just don't deal with them separately. So Bhagavan Swarup is giving one single advice which subsumes, which encompasses, comprehensively covers everything else. So it's a very integral approach. That's what he's saying. Tathacha mam eva sarva dharma karyakaritvat madeka saranasya nasti dharma apeksha ityarthaha. Because all the dharmas you are doing anyway, the results will accrue to you through me and through my blessings. And Bhagavan, I said earlier, there are different kinds of people and they worship different kinds of gods and goddesses. But the results they get is through me. Whatever prayers they're doing to whichever person, whichever divinity comes to me, because I'm the ultimate thing, and these are names and forms of me in different stations of life. There are different consciousnesses. They want to deal with me, and I have no problem. It's like whichever person of the government of India you respectfully talk to and pay your taxes and deal with them, the president of India is not bothered. He's saying, yeah, this guy is loyal to the government. He's not waging a war against the government of India. Why? Because you, whoever is near, you think this is the government of India, the collector of a district, or maybe a subdivisional magistrate, or maybe a secretary, or maybe the chief minister. He says, yeah, I respect government. And who is government? The chief minister, maybe the district collector. Is the president afraid of it? Angry with it? No. He's saying, let him do it. He's a law-abiding citizen. I shall protect him. Same way, God is not bothered about who we are worshipping, because he knows these divine forms are his creation, because we have our diverse needs, and therefore he has created different names and forms through which we try to seek him. Even if we think we are actually seeking goodness and greatness and blessings and power from that name and a form, God provides that through that name and a form. He has no problem. And therefore he's saying, tat karyakarita labhaya jagya, tathacha mam eva sarva dharma karyakaritvat, because I am the one, all the dharmas you do, I finally ensure the completion and the results thereof. Mad eka saranasya, and once you take refuge in me, nasti dharma apeksha ityartha, and you surrender to me, that is not dependent on performance of any dharma. If you do dharmas, then there is dependence on me. You directly surrender to me, it's not dependent on anything. Once you surrender, things flow quietly for you without any hassles. Etena idam apastam. And then there is a wrong interpretation which is refuted. Sarva dharman paritijya ityukte na adharmanam parityaga. Somebody might misinterpret saying that, yeah, dharman parityaga, which means adharma you can do. You can be engaged in sinful activities, lapyate. Ata dharma padam karma matra paramiti. So when he says sarva dharman paritijya means he's saying drop all the actions. That means what? Karma is always bandhakaraka. But once you convert that into a prayer, it's no more binding on you. So that karma matra, I'll do this work, I'll get this result. That mindset is very limited in nature. You try to transcend that and be loyal to me. The other things are going to happen to you. I'll make you do a lot of things. But that's going to happen through my approval, through my grace, and through my direction. नहीं अत्र कर्म त्यागो विधीयते. यहाँ पे कर्म त्याग भी नहीं कह रहे हैं. We Shankaracharya says ultimately, it's all karma tyaga. What, of course, with jnana nishtha, with antakarna suddhi. But he's saying, but that's not what is the meaning here. Apitu vidyamanepi karmani. Even though karmas are there, tatra anadarina. Don't get obsessed with them. Don't have adara, means attachment to them. Bhagavat eka saranata matra. What is the ultimate thing? Dedication to the Lord. So, if you are in an ashram or if you are in a temple, you can actually do seva. You could be at a ticket counter, you could be in the library, you could be doing charity. But if you ask these guys who are doing this seva, if you shout at them also, they are not bothered if they are intelligent ones. Why? Because they are not thinking at all, they are doing anything except praying to the Lord through these activities. For them, this is a prayer for them. So that Bhagavat Eka Saranata is the ultimate secret of it. Matram brahmachari grihastha banaprastha bhikshunam sadharanyena vidhiyate. This is common to all four ashramas. Whether you are brahmachari studying in the colleges and the schools, you're married with your family, or you're banaprastha, you have retired, or you are a bhikshu, you are completely sannyasi. You have gone to live in isolation. This is common to all of them. Tatra sarvadharman parityajya iti tesam swadharma adar sambhavena tan nivaranartham. So sarvadharman parityajya, what is the need for mentioning this? When you're saying all these chaturasrama dharmas have to be observed, all Bhagavan is saying, just remember me. What is the need for saying that sarvadharman parityajya? He's saying, because it's quite possible that so there's a good, loyal child and listening to the mother and the father, and he's a very good son. It's quite possible that he's a little obsessed with that role of a son or daughter. Similarly, the husband caters to the family, does everything, but he could have some ahankara that I'm a great father, I'm a great husband. The wife might start thinking, I'm a great mother, I'm managing the whole show. The moment these thoughts come, we lose ourselves. We forget God. Ahankara replaces God. So Bhagavan is saying, yeah, these roles are given by me. You perform those things which you are faced with according to my direction and with a sense of surrender to me. But please remember that your only job is to actually pray to me. That's the top secret. Whether you want to do it is up to you. But if you are actually looking for quick liberation out of this whole, this conundrum called life, full of confusions and anxieties, such apparent happinesses and some sadnesses, that is the secret. That is the top secret, Bhagavan is saying. Therefore, in order to remove that wrong possibility of getting waylaid by our own roles and responsibilities and developing attachment, Bhagavan is saying, Sarvadharman parityajya means continue to do, but don't get attached. Tasmad varnasrama dharma dharmanam abhyudaya hetutva prasiddhehe mokhe hetutvam api syad iti sanka nirakaranartham eva etad vacha iti nyayam. It's very logical, he's saying. Nyayam. So there are 2 years there. Nyayam. Nyaya anapetam. It's very much with logic. It's very strongly logical. What is it? That whether if a person starts thinking that I'm doing my varnashrama dharma, it is abhyudaya hetu, it is going to lift me, take to Swarga. So if I do it very well, then I can as well get liberation. What's wrong with it? He says, no, you can't get abhyudaya, it's limited in result. You might go to Swarga, but nothing is niratisaya. Niratisaya means what? There is something superior to it. And there is, in Chandogya, he mentions a statement, alpena nasukam, nobody is happy with less. Yovei bhuma, yadvei bhuma tatsukam. Whatever is absolute, unlimited, that only will give you happiness. And what is that? Knowing about the self. So alpena nasukam, nobody is happy with less. So nobody wants to settle for limited happiness. Now you have craving for more money, more house, this, that, but this, what is greater is having that ultimate sense of freedom. There are even a lot of sannyasis, to be very honest. They leave their houses and jobs and families and they go and become sannyasis. Now, still they have that particular sense of dissatisfaction. Why? They came here for what? For Ishvara darshan, for liberation, for getting that complete transcendence from all thoughts, all confusions. And that's not going to happen in a day. That's not very easy. They may be better off vis-a-vis the people who are in samsara in terms of they don't have to argue with anyone. They're not caught up in competing situations where there is a lot of jealousy, deadlines, maybe some embarrassment because there's some failure on some front. These things are not there. But they are not free from that deficiency. That deficiency will be over only when there is Ishvara darshan. So the serious spiritual aspirants also have, if you look at, Swami Vivekananda, you have that he was sitting in the name of, in the house of Kali Tapasvi in Calcutta and was saying, what have we done? How do we get God? I have a lot of spiritual experiences. But these experiences are nothing that I was looking for. I was looking for complete dissolution in the self, in Brahman. When is that going to happen? You know who was he? He was Swami Vivekananda. What about normal people? No, it's not easy. Therefore, he's saying what? Sarvadharman. So he's saying adharma cha anartha phale kasya api adar abhavat. And then so far adharma we can do no. That is not at all in consideration. Kasyapi adar abhavat tat parityaga vasanam anarthakam eva. So obviously he doesn't mention the dharma ko pehle you should leave all adharma, do dharma, then dharma. No. Nobody is interested. We are talking about superior students who are already ready for Nishkama Karma Yoga and Jnana Nishtha. And he is talking about the ultimate candidates for liberation. So you please also drop the adharma. No, they have left it long back. So he's saying anarthakam eva. शास्त्रांतर प्राप्तत्वाच्च अधर्म करने के लिए कोई शास्त्र का जरूरी है क्या? राग द्वेष अपने से होता है, स्वभावतः प्राप्त है. So that's why the Veda doesn't say that you should take spicy food or you enjoy rasgullas. Why? Ragatah prapta. These things will attract you naturally. Why should Shastra mention which you are by nature pulled to do? Shastra doesn't prescribe that. Shastra prescribes what you are naturally not inclined to do. That's what it mentions. Tasmad varnasrama dharmanam abhyuday hetutva prasiddhehe moksha hetutvam apisyad iti sanka nirakaratham eva etadvasa iti nyayam न च सर्वधर्माधर्म परित्यागो अत्र विधीयते संन्यास शास्त्रेण प्रतिषेध शास्त्रेण च लब्धत्वात् एव सर्वधर्म and adharma parityaga actually is not that's not intended that you will actually leave any dharma or adharma. If that is the case, dharma tyaga is mentioned in sannyasa shastra because you will do sarva karma parityaga, all the rituals and all you will dump and you go to the ashram and study Vedanta. So dharma parityaga happens there. Adharma parityaga, the shastras tell you there is pratisheda shastra, what you should not do, the dharma shastras. Why should Bhagavan waste his time in Bhagavad Gita? The sarva dharma and parityaga, sarva dharma, adharma parityajya. Why is he going to waste his time? He knows these are already there. He's going to say something new, something innovative, which has not been mentioned earlier, and therefore he's saying that's not mentioned here. Then what is it? Nasa idam api sannyasa shastram, and it's not sannyasa shastra. That sarva karma sannyasa is the ultimate principle. As Shankaracharya explains, he's saying no. Bhagavad eka saranataya vidhisitatva, because actually what Bhagavan is trying to prescribe to his student, that ultimate surrender to the divine. Complete surrender. You know, in that beautiful, if you find time, there's a very tiny book by Sri Aurobindo called The Mother. You know, you can read that book several times. And when first time I read, you know, I was overwhelmed because it's such a simple book. And he says that for spiritual transformation, there are two critical principles that all of us will have to follow. Complete rejection of falsehood and complete surrender to the truth and to the divine. Both have to happen simultaneously. So we have to do adharma parityaga, that's for sure. But at the same time, by nature we are moral, we lead an ethical life, but complete surrender to the divine. Because without that surrender, even if you get rid of all your bad habits, the movement forward is not easy. So it's like you have been told what are the wrong directions, but you have not been told what's the right direction. And even if you know, you don't know how to go. So that's why complete surrender to the divine principle is so important. Then he talks about the principle of Mahalakshmi and the Mahasaraswati and the Mahakali principles, where it's a very beautiful book, very short, maybe 20, 25 pages. So Bhagavad Eka Saranatayaha Vidhitsitatvad, because this is what is intended to be prescribed. Tasma Sarva Dharman Parityajya Iti Anuvada Eva. So that's why whatever he's mentioning here is essentially saying that you have to completely surrender to the divine. Sarvesam tu shastranam parama rahasyam Ishwa Saranata Eva iti tatriva Sastra Parisamapti Bhagavata Krita. Now, he has just mentioned the earlier thing, that this is the ultimate thing I'm saying. So, this verse is actually bringing it to a close, the whole discourse of Bhagavad Gita. This is the final message. Parama Rahasyam, Ishwara Saranata Eva iti. So, the final answer to all the curiosities of the sadhaka, of us, is concluded with the last sentence in it: surrender to the Lord in whatever name and form you want, but please surrender. That is the ultimate advice. Tam antarena sannyasasya api swafalaparyaya vasitvat. And then, because without that, you know, because without this surrender to the Lord, even this sarva karma sannyasa is not going to give you any result, because you may have some lexiconic knowledge about Upanishads, but pure transformation is not going to ensure. So even that particular thing, the surrender is a must. Arjunam cha kshetriyam sannyasa anadhikarinam. I told you that Madhusudana Saraswati, writing in his own historical context, which is about 5 centuries back, is definitely saying his very orthodox interpretation of Shankaracharya's words, that only Brahmins could endure the hardship of sannyasa. That was the first phase of these Shankaracharya interpretations, but later on Sureshwaracharya made it clearer that everybody who's having a right to read the Vedas can also take sannyas, but these days the akhadas have gone a step further, saying that everybody can be given a sannyasa, provided they have a strong aspiration and they have the self-clarity and they have some vairagya. So a lot of foreigners, and now we have people from the scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, they are all declared as Mahamandaleshwars. There's also mentioning recently in one of the conferences of these monks, there was a head of Mandaleshwar of the Balmik Samaj, the scheduled caste, who came and addressed. And it was such a pleasant thing that all these people and women and foreigners, one foreigner, I think from one of these, I think, Scandinavian countries. So he also gave a speech, and he's a Mandaleshwar. He runs a lot of ashrams in Europe, and he spoke in fluent Hindi, mixing that with a lot of Sanskrit, which was amazing. So we have come a long way. But he's saying that Kshetriyam sannyasa anadhikarinam prati sannyasa upadesa ayogat. And then why should Bhagavan mean sarvakarma sannyasa, according to Madhusudana Saraswati, when Bhagavan has earlier told him that you try to do karma and surrender to me, because you may not have the right to take sannyasa, maybe may not be able to take sannyasa. He has already solved that problem. So why should we misinterpret this verse to mean sarvakarma sannyasa, is Bhagavan Sri Shankaracharya tries to do. Arjuna vyasena anyasya upadesha tu vakhyami te hitam tva mukhyaisyami sarva papebhyas tva ma sucha iti cha upakrama upasanharo no syatam. Now, if Bhagavan had to advise sarvakarma sannyasa, which is actually intended for the Brahmins in those historical conditions, then why should he tell Arjuna that I shall save you from all the sins and follow this? When the advice, the hidden advice in this verse is actually sarvakarma sannyasa, which Arjuna is not allowed to do even at that moment because he's just ready for karma nishtha. Why should Bhagavan say this? But this advice that please surrender to me, you can give to a child, to a young man, to an old person, irrespective of his nationality, his caste, his religion, his gender. You can give it to anybody. So that is the perfect advice. That is the perfect interpretation. And not to argue that this is the hidden message is sarvakarma sannyasa. Tasmad sannyasa dharmasu api anadarena. So therefore, even don't get obsessed with the fact that you are a sarvakarma sannyasi and you have taken the line, you're wearing the saffron clothes and you have a sense of superiority. Bhagavad eka saranata matre tatparyam bhagavataha. Bhagavan is saying, irrespective of whatever station in life you are, maybe you are a grihastha, maybe you are a vanaprasthi, maybe you are a sannyasi. But do not forget, if you're obsessed with that station in life, you're not making any progress. You have to turn around and look at me and surrender to me. That's what Bhagavan is saying. Yasmatva madeka saranaha. And because you have surrendered to me, sarva dharman anadarena ato aham sarva dharma karyakari tvam sarva papebhyo bandhuvadhadi nimitebhyah sansara hetubhyah mukhyishami prayश्चितं bina eva dharmena papam apanudati iti srutehe dharmastanyatvacha mama. Now he's giving a long sentence, but the meaning is very simple and straightforward. What he's saying is, if you surrender to me as the final destination, as your last refuse, if you do any kind of sarva dharma karya karitva. So because you are doing this and you become a cause of certain future results, it could be negative or positive, and they all are given to you through me. And even if you by mistake commit certain errors, with my grace, without doing prayashchita karma, you can actually elevate yourself to the next level. It's like, a kind of loan amnesty scheme by Bhagavan, so far papas are concerned. He's giving a loan, papa amnesty. What does he do? He's giving one-time amnesty. You have surrendered to me. You had committed a few errors in your youth, or maybe when you were a student, you have beaten up a few friends in the football match. You have been not been very respectful to your dad in some arguments, or maybe you had a lot of arguments with your wife, and sometimes you gave a few rude remarks to her, and she wasn't happy. She cried maybe, and you never asked for forgiveness because you were very arrogant. Now you have turned to me. Okay, maybe you didn't pay enough attention to your children because you're busy with your work. Now they're grown up, they don't need your attention too much. Now you are turning to me. Bhagwan is saying, fine, don't you worry, don't look back, don't shed tears about what you haven't been able to do better. But now you're surrendered to me, right? Yes. So I'm giving you one-time amnesty. The Shastra says, Dharmena papam apanudati. You have done a lot of papa, you do some dharma. So you have hurt a girl. Okay, fine. You help a helpless girl who comes in your life. You help a poor girl get married. Then you are neutralizing this papa. And maybe you had been very rude to some of your friends when you're in school, but then maybe you give some scholarship to poor boys who are studying. That papa is removed. Similarly, there are different, so you have been very rude or maybe very angry with people, or maybe you are very selfish, or maybe you do some charity work. Maybe you send some money to some orphanage. Maybe you help some animals and birds by contributing the wildlife society. We're not the UN ones because they're flush with funds and they spend all your funds in air travel and five-star retreats. You give to the right people who are doing some work. And you have a sense of satisfaction that I'm sponsoring a couple of children and their studies. Directly, one can do it. And then by doing this, you remove your papas. But Bhagwan is saying here one thing which is very interesting. Without prayashchita, without these kinds of things, you do that. I'll give you direction when to do some good thing. But you're doing it not because you want to remove your papas, because I'm going to remove your papas. Why should you do charities? Yeah. As a prayer to the Lord, you can do it. Because if you, from your way within your heart, you feel, let me help him. Children of God, I want to make Lord Krishna smile at me, not for any benefits. I just want to make him happy. So let me do that. Let me make Ma Kali happy with me. I want to do that. That's a prayer. And she's going to be happy. So you're doing no problem. And your papas are removed. Why? Bhagavan says, I can give you an amnesty. No one else can, but he can or she can. Ato mam sucha, ato ma sucha. So don't feel depressed. Don't you worry about it. Yuddhe prabhritasya, because you are now in a warfield. And for us, what is the warfield? Our life. Mama bandhu baddhadi nimita pratyavayat katham nistaraha. You have a fear. I'm in samsara. There's a bit of competition. Sometimes I have to do this, some compromises. How can I be free from the ill effects of this? Bhagavan says, don't worry. You surrender to me. I'll tell you how to get rid of it. I'll make you swim through this whole process. Iti sokam ma karshi. So don't you worry. Bhagavan is reassuring. Now he's mentioned a couple of verses here. I mean, these are his own poetic rendition of his own advice. Bhasyakarai nirastani durmatani iha vistaran grantha vakhyanam atrarthi matrarthi natadartham aham yate tasyevaham mamaivaso sa eva aham iti tridha bhagavat saranatvam syad sadhana bhyasa pakatah विशेष वर्णितो अस्माभिः सर्वभक्ति रसायने ग्रंथ विस्तरभिरुत्वाद ding matram iha kathyate. So he's mentioned about himself. Bhasyakarehi nirastani durmatani iha vistarat. So he's saying all the methods which are mentioned, how to get rid of your papas and through different kind of karmas and prayaschitas and others, Sankaracharya said how to get rid of all that through vairagya, through removal of the karma bandhas and getting into the jnana nishta. Okay, he has already explained. He's given a very long speech here on this verse, and he's saying, "I'm just trying to write this. I'm just explain what is written in the Bhagavad Gita slokas, not give a long speech on that." Grantha Vakhyana Matrarthi. I'm interested in only explaining what Bhagavan has said. So there are these two ways to interpret text. There's something called exegesis, where you are trying to explain it honestly, and the other one is where you are trying to put in your understanding into it. What Madhusudan is saying is, I'm just trying to indulge in or engage in what is called exegesis. Just explain it. I'm not trying to impose my views on it. Not that artham aham yate. So I'm not trying to sort of give you some external explanations to it or whatever. Then what is the bhakti that Bhagavat Ekasaranata is explaining? There are three stages of it. Tasya vaham. First, the bhakta thinks, I'm yours, O Lord. Mamai vasu, he is mine, the second level. Sa eva aham iti tridha. These are the three levels. He is not different from me. You know, if you see a romantically entangled couple who get into a marriage or relationship, after a few years, when their relationship has completely stabilized, what happens is the lady, for example, generally might say that I keep doing things for you. I fulfill all your desires. I'm yours. Do you ever think about me? But I'll continue to be yours. It could be a husband or wife. Then, after some times, they have an argument or something. Then one lover challenges the other one. Could be wife. So she challenges him. Okay, so you want to go away? You can go away. I have no problem. But please remember, it will be impossible for you to get rid of me in your heart. You can't physically separate. You want to go away? Okay, go. Let me see. Can you forgive me for all time to come? That's the condition. Can you forgive me? Because you are mine. That is the second thing he says. And finally, when the whole thing matures, okay, they become like siblings. They don't anymore fight. Each one knows what the other one wants. They are like machines dealing with each other. Each movement of one spouse is understood by the one. If you look at old couples, I've seen that. It's amazing. They just understand each other so well. They hardly talk. They understand what the other one wants. So what is that state? I mean, they know they just become each other in terms of understanding of life. So there's no conflict, whatever. They're just like perfect machines, like two robots in a relationship. Same thing happens in bhakti. So he is mine, sorry, I am his of the Lord, and then he is mine. You are more confident. And finally, oh, there's no difference in me and my Lord. We are the same. That is this Advaita thing comes in the end. Bhagavad Eka Saranatvam Syat Sadhana Abhyasa Pakatah. Sadhana and Abhyasa. You have to do the prayers and you continues to practice that. When it matures, Pakatah, as a result of that, one reaches that aham asau, soham, aham asau. I am he and he is me, and that sort of a thing finally. Visheso Varnito Asmavihi Sarva Bhakti Rasayana. If you want to read more, there's this famous book by Madhusudana Saraswati called Bhagavat Bhakti Rasayana. Grantha Vistara Bhirutvad, because I do not want to spread this. I'm afraid of spreading, writing more. Ding matram iha kathyate. I have just given you some indications about bhakti. You want to know more about bhakti? Read my book. He's also sort of giving a short introduction, a trailer to the rich discussions he has in the Bhagavad Bhakti Rasayana. Tatra adyam mrudu yatha. So in the beginning, the love between the devotee and God It's very romantic. Oh, sorry, we have crossed the time. I'll stop here. There's a little more, and we'll do that. It'll take 3-4 days. Maybe by this weekend we'll be done with it. And so I've just crossed the time, so we'll stop here. And